Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, or morning, depending on where you may be joining this webinar from. Thank you so much for joining this live webinar. My name is Twape Mtila. I am a private wealth manager at Carrick Investment Services based in Mauritius. I am originally from Malawi, and I will be hosting this webinar today. The title of the webinar is Mastering Retirement as an African Expatriate. That is what we're going to be discussing today. Mastering retirement as an African expatriate. I have been working as an offshore financial advisor since 2017. In the last 3 years, I have specialized my business to exclusively work with African expatriates working across the globe. I'm speaking about this topic because it's a topic that is very, very near and dear to my heart, and something that I think about very, very often because I interact with Africans all over the globe on a daily basis and help them to navigate their journeys. And as much as expats have different things that they encounter, retirement is one of the things that have stood out to me over the last few years as being something that is of concern. It's concerning what's happening in some instances, and in some instances, what is not happening when it comes to planning for retirement. So let's start with who we are and why it is that we do it, and the circumstances in which that we do it. So I am a private wealth manager at Carrick Investment Services. And who is Carrick? Carrick is a wealth management and financial planning firm. Our head office is in Cape Town, in Century City. We have 11 offices across the African region. I sit in the Mauritius office, which is our international office, which allows us to work with individuals globally, even if they are not resident within Mauritius. So Carrick in Mauritius represents our international office. Carrick Investment Services works as an intermediary and a partner to our individual clients with the organizations that we have partnerships with, and we specialize only in the offshore space. Carrick Wealth is an offshore financial advisory firm. And that is probably the most important fact when it comes to speaking about this particular topic, especially being a Malawian. Because what does offshore mean? What does offshore financial advisory mean? What it means is we help and guide our clients in how they can save, invest, and protect their wealth outside of the environment that they come from. So as a Malawian, investing offshore is having the ability to keep money outside the borders of Malawi in a safe, secure environment, in a safe, secure currency, in a way that stores value that I can draw from at a later date. The reason why we specialize in offshore financial solutions is very, very simple. Every single African country, and everybody on this call is from Africa, every single African country, bar none, has three things in common. Number one, currency risk. I don't know how many of you on this call follow what has been going on in Malawi, but over the last 18 months, the Malawi kwacha has devalued by a cumulative amount of over 77%, meaning that the same amount of kwachas that a person had 18 months ago can now buy them 77% less than it could have previously against the United States dollar. And this is a phenomenon that is taking place all over Africa. I see it happening in Kenya. I see it happening in Egypt. I see it happening in Ghana. I see it happening in Nigeria. All across the continent, Africans are dealing with the fact that their local currencies are losing value against major hard currencies. The second is inflation risk. The prices of goods and services going up locally at a speed that normally outstrips one's income. Cost of living crisis is a phrase that's getting thrown around more and more often every day, but essentially what it means is that it's becoming more and more expensive to live on a day-to-day basis. And the third thing that every African country has in common is political risk. Political risk inherently is the understanding and appreciation that the politics of our countries have an adverse effect on the value of our wealth. These three things put together mean that at any given point, there are factors that are affecting the value of your wealth that you are not in control of. So how do you plan? How do you plan to buy something in 2 years? How do you plan for your children's university education? How do you plan for your retirement? How do you plan for anything? Now, everybody on this call is an expatriate, which shifts the conversation slightly because the work that I do is then, okay, how do we make sure that we protect portions of your wealth outside of this environment that we've just described? And the reason why I want to speak about retirement specifically is because it's something that's very, very personal to me. For most people who maybe don't have financial backgrounds such as myself, what do they tell you to do? Tell you to go to the work, you get a job, you go to work, you contribute to your pension, you get to retirement, you get your pension, and you retire. My father did exactly the same thing. 45 years he worked. He walked into his pension company on retirement, and they said they'd give him 500,000 kwacha a month, which at the time, 500,000 kwacha was 500 United States dollars. Now, if I'm not mistaken, 500,000 kwacha is $250. But these three phenomena that I've just described, illuminates the fact that if you have your entire retirement plan in a local currency that is being hit by devaluation, being hit by inflation, and is stuck in the middle of political instability, you are going to run out of money in your retirement. So the reason why Carrick helps its clients to invest offshore in state-secure currencies, in state-secure jurisdictions, is to protect them from this very phenomenon that I'm describing that's happening across Africa. So let's talk a little bit more about retirement specifically and the journey to retirement as an expatriate. I've broken it down into 4 very simple stages. And what tends to happen? You have your early career where you're just getting started out. And sometimes it's not really early on in your career, but there's the early part of your career before one becomes an expat, before one leaves home. Then there's the opportunity that comes, an intra-company transfer, an opportunity you get on LinkedIn, a referral that you get, the opportunity comes to leave. You then have the project phase and diversification phase. This is when there's slightly a little bit more money and slightly a little bit more resources available in order to invest in certain things. And then comes the end, which is the retirement. And I'm going to speak about what I have noticed most expats have been doing, and then cross-reference that against what my clients are doing at Carrick and how we're able to help them, with me going into a little bit more detail at the end about the mistakes that a lot of expats are making when it comes to planning for their retirement. So we'll talk about the early career very quickly. You start out in your career, this is what I like to call the pension build phase, right? You've gotten your first job or your first few jobs, and this is when you start contributing to the pension, right? Whether it's a pension or a gratuity, whatever the case may be. But more often than not, you're either in the country where you've just finished studying, or you're in your home country, right? You've gone home and you've gotten your first job and you've started contributing to your pension. And it doesn't really matter how long it is between when you start working and when you become an expat. It can be 10 years, it can be 20 years, whatever that period is, that is the period that I refer to as the pension build. And more often than not, in those instances, you are only exposed to the different financial instruments that are available wherever you are. So that's the pension build. And then the opportunity comes, whatever the case may be, wherever you are. But because everyone on this call is an African expat, chances are you were in Africa or you had left to go and travel, and then the opportunity to stay in an international country or the opportunity to leave your home country on the continent pops up. And why do people seek opportunities outside of their home country? Now, I would like to argue that, yes, sometimes it's for self-actualization and sometimes it's for for career development. But more often than not, when you strip it down to the bare bones, most people seek international opportunities because it makes them more money. It gives them more resources. It gives them better opportunities. It allows them to do something that they couldn't do before, send their kids to better schools, build their retirement home. Whatever the case may be, at a certain level, when you seek out an international opportunity as an African expat, most of the time it is because you want more money. And if you come from Malawi, it's because you are leaving so that you can earn in a currency that is outside of the Malawian kwacha, or the Zambian kwacha, or the Nigerian naira, or the Ghanaian cedi. Whatever the case may be, what you want is you want to earn in hard currency. That's when the opportunity comes. And then the opportunity comes, and this is my favorite slide in the whole presentation. This is my favorite slide. Then the opportunity comes, and then you start making a little bit more. There's a little bit more of an excess. You've got a little bit more room. And the reason why I call it the project phase is because it's also around about the same time that you start to have the conversation with yourself about, what am I actually going to do when I retire? Am I going to have enough money when I retire? Am I going to be able to do this when I retire? Where do I want to live when I retire? That's when you start to have these conversations. And the reason why this is my favorite slide is because every time I meet with my clients, I draw this very same diagram of them. And it's a very, very simple diagram. The salary goes into the bank account, expenses go out of the bank account. Everything that is left in the bank account is supposed to go up into your savings. Normally, as a rule of thumb, we say that savings should either be equivalent of 3 months of your monthly income or 6 months of your expenses, whichever is more. But the idea being that on average, an educated individual with a degree or a master's degree, on average, it takes them between 3 to 6 months to find a new job. So if you have 3 months of your income or 6 months of your expenses, you will be able to go through the job hunting process without there being a great loss in quality of living. Once you hit that savings amount and you've got that buffer, everything over and above that then goes into projects. Now, Africans are going to love this one. Now, what goes into projects? Projects is building a house, buying a new car, building a cottage at the lake, starting that farm, building a townhouse, investing in a friend's business. Whatever the case may be, the projects box is always supposed to come after the savings. Now, I'll skip to the bit at the end, but what happens in most instances is that people skip the savings part and go straight from bank account right into the projects, right into buying the new car, right into building the house, right into, but this is the point where people start to now think about other things that they should be doing. Let me buy a piece of land. Let me build another house. Let me take out another investment. Let me start buying some shares on the New York Stock Exchange. This is the point where they start thinking about their projects. And this is the point where you start to build. And then you get to the end. You've worked, you've been an expatriate, and you get to the end. And the phrase I like to use is that the end is the beginning, right? This is when you start to receive an annuity on your pension, or you're living off of those projects that are supposed to be giving you an income. But the reason that I put that picture on the slide is not because I like the side of my own face. The reason that I put that picture is because I wanted to speak specifically about the end and the way that Africans and African expats think about the end. When I took this picture, believe it or not, I was 32 years old. And that's the bit that I wanted to talk about, 32 years, right? If you imagine that you could rewind time and go back to the hospital 32 years before this picture was taken, and go next to my mother in the hospital bed and say to her, we want to write you a check. We're going to write you a check. And the amount of money that we put on this check is all the money that you're ever going to have for everything to do with your son. Clothes, school fees, books, stationery, fuel, book bags, every single thing that you are going to spend on your son, Dwabe, until the age of 32. And we're going to make one deposit, and you're going to have to take care of your son off of that amount for 32 years. What is the number that would be on that check? Now, the answer to that question is that the number is inconceivable. It is an inconceivable number to think how much money you would need to spend on somebody for 32 years. Airtime, cell phones, school fees, clothes. It's inconceivable. But that is exactly what retirement is. You get to a certain point, the clock stops, and whatever it is that you have in the bank, in the pot, in the investment, in the kitty, must last you an unknown amount of time into the future until the day that you die. My grandfather is 98 years old, 99 years old. He retired at 60. That's 39 years. He's been retired longer than I have been alive. So when you look at it from that perspective and you start to have conversations with people about their retirement, and they say, and they're not having the right conversations about how much money they're going to need, the fundamental truth is that if you do not plan correctly, you're going to run out of money. So how do we help our clients to navigate through this? The webinar is called Mastering Retirement as an African Expat. But the first thing that we need to deal with are, what are the challenges or mistakes that African expatriates continue to make that are exacerbating the situation at retirement as they pass through these 4 stages? And very, very quickly, I'm going to run through them, because the first is a concentration in geography, currency, and assets. The second is starting too late or starting from scratch. The third is ownership, death and service, and succession. The fourth is not having a sustainable plan. And the fifth is underestimating the cost of retirement. So let's go through those very quickly. And remember, the original point that I had made about the reason why we advise our clients to invest offshore: currency risk, inflation risk, political risk. So concentration in geography, currency, and assets. So you start your career, you get the opportunity, and then you go to that project phase. So there's a little bit of savings, there's a little bit of extra money, and then you start to invest into things or put money into things that are supposed to support you in your retirement, but they're all concentrated in one place, in one currency, or in one type of asset. Africans' biggest guilt assets: real estate. Everything is in property. Or it's all in real estate, all in one country. 15 townhouses, all of them in Lagos, all of them in Lusaka, all of them all in one currency, all paying out in one currency. Now, the mistake that I see so many African expats make is that they get their jobs internationally and they take all that money that they're earning internationally and they send it all back home. Now, there's no issue with having investments back home. But what it is that we do as Carrick is we help to guide our clients into how they can diversify their portfolios so that all of their money isn't all in one place. Because if you have all of your eggs in one basket, what happens if something happens? I spoke with a client recently who had all of his pension put into a property. All of it, the whole amount. And then there were heavy rains and the entire property got flooded. Now, anything can happen. COVID can happen. Natural disasters can happen. Markets can also crash. So the point isn't that one is better than the other. The point is that there needs to be diversification, because as African expats, we keep making the same mistakes by taking all of our excess money and putting it into farming. I can't count on both of my hands the number of people who I've spoken to who said, I'm just going to go into farming. Oh, but then it was a bad yield, it was a bad crop, I lost all of my money. Oh no, the person I entrusted to take care of the farm didn't look after it, I lost everything. I had a conversation with a gentleman who said to me, it cost me more to maintain the kitchen than I get in rentals. How is this an investment? The diversification across geography, currency, and assets. And those of us that are expats are guilty of it too, because I speak to people all the time who say, oh no, Robert, I don't invest back home. I invest in the New York Stock Exchange. But everything is in stocks. It's not diversified across different assets. I have clients that come to me all the time and say, how can I invest into the S&P 500? Tell me about government bonds. I only want to invest into government bonds. You cannot only invest into one asset class. There has to be diversification across the board. Because essentially, particularly for the individuals that send all of their money back to their home country, you're taking all of that money and putting it back into this environment that I have described, and then you have to rely on that for 30, 40 odd years. The second challenge that I see a lot of people struggling with is starting too late or starting from scratch. Because once you start the pension build, you're building up the pension back home or wherever you start, then the opportunity comes. So you have to leave. You leave the organization, you leave the country, so you're starting from scratch. You've joined this new organization. And the dynamic that I'm seeing in a lot of international organizations, especially a lot of people that leave Africa when they're working for development partners like the UN, is that they join these organizations on a consultant basis. So there is no pension. So you leave the old pension you had back home, you get this job, which is paying you a lot more money, but now there's no pension. There's no employer mandated way for you to have a retirement plan. So essentially, there are a lot of people who are just winging it and gunning it on their own. And then going back to number one, I'm making all of this excess money, but I'm putting all my money into townhouses in Malawi, putting all my money into townhouses in Maputo, taking all my money and putting it into townhouses in Nairobi, right? So you're starting too late or you're starting from scratch. So what is happening is that when you start to get to retirement age and you look back, you start to realize that I might not actually have enough. I don't know whether I've only been with this. I left my home country and I joined this organization 5 years ago. So I only have 5 years worth of pension contributions. It's not going to be enough. What am I going to do? And this is a very, very major challenge that a lot of clients are going through. One of the other challenges that a lot of people are going through is not having a sustainable plan. Here comes the project again. It's my favorite slide. Not having a sustainable plan means taking funds, diverting them into projects which in the long run are not going to be able to sustain. Looking at real estate, for example, you invest into real estate into your home country, and you're going to receive rentals in the local income. But that local currency, I beg your pardon, that local currency continues to lose value every year because of devaluation. This is not a sustainable retirement plan. You're going to invest all of your retirement funds into a business which is contingent on all of the inputs of whatever you're selling being imported. But you're in a country where there are forex issues. How is this a sustainable plan? How is this going to continue to tick over? How is this going to continue to work for you when you have retired? How are you going to be able to sustain this when you're older and you don't have as much energy to be able to be as active in the project as you were before? Another challenge is underestimating the cost of retirement. This one's a big one. You might need to spend some extra time on this one. Underestimating the cost of retirement. If I had $1 for every time somebody said to me, Drabe, I'm going to need less than what I make now when I retire. I ran a poll on my LinkedIn 2 weeks ago. Over 50% of the people said that they would need the same amount or less than what they make now when they reach retirement. It's a very, very common misconception, and it's wrong in every single way. By every metric that can be measured, there is no proof to show that your cost of living is going to change when you retire. The concentration of your costs is going to change when you retire, but not the actual amounts. The amounts are going to be shifted from one area into another area, but you're not going to spend less. Particularly if you've been working as an expat. Another common thing that I hear is, oh, it's fine. You know, we were living this kind of lifestyle when we were working, but we're going to downgrade. We'll be on the farm, so we're not going to need that much money. It doesn't work like that practically. So what tends to happen is that people get into false senses of security about how much money they're going to make. One of the biggest issues that expats particularly are facing is that they have an augmented reality of how much their cost of living really is. So you don't actually know how much money you would need in the bank to be able to live the quality of life that you live at the moment. So many organizations where accommodation is provided for, fuel is provided for, transport is provided for, airtime, data, housing allowances, medical aid, flights home once a year, whatever the case may be. There are all of these things that your employer is subsidizing essentially in your life, which you are not having to pay for out of pocket. And then you get to retirement and you need to do those same things. So even if the income amount stays the same, you make $10,000 today, the day you retire, I promise you, you're still going to make $10,000. But your cost of living was not 10,000. It was 10,000 plus all these other things that the employer subsidized. It's the very same reason why you see so many people downgrading when they get to retirement, because they get to keep the car that they had when they were the executive. But now they have to service it themselves, and they have to fuel it up themselves, and they have to pay for those flights themselves, and they have to maintain the house themselves, and they have to, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So they see the quality of life starting to change. Particularly if you've worked as an expat, there's a particular quality of life that you have become accustomed to. How are you going to maintain that if you think that you're going to need less money? Underestimating the cost of retirement leads to bad planning. It leads to falling short. It leads to making yourself think that you've got enough. It leads people to make decisions based on inaccurate information. And the biggest effect of that is it leads people to having to work past, because they get closer to retirement, they realize they don't have enough, and then they start trying to find more ways to extend the contract, or let me just get an extension, let me add another year, let me start consulting. But they're getting older in age and they really don't have the energy to do it, but they completely misinterpreted and underestimated the cost of their retirement. Underestimating the cost of retirement is a very, very big issue. When you couple that with a concentration of investments into a particular asset class or a particular currency that is losing value, and you add that to the environment of African countries, it becomes more and more important to be able to diversify your retirement income outside the borders of Africa in order to be able to protect yourself and protect your family. Ownership, death and service, and succession. This is a very big challenge that is facing a lot of African expats because we don't talk about it. What happens if you die tomorrow? What's going to happen? What's going to happen to your loved ones or to your children? What's the company going to do? How are all of these things going to relate to each other? The reason why I say that we don't talk about it enough is because it's being left out, particularly with expats that have been able to generate relatively large sums of savings and large sums of money. Because I think it's important to note that as Carrick Wealth, we are not investment advisors. We are wealth managers, and wealth management is intertwined with having peace of mind every night when you go to bed, that if I die tomorrow, my wife or my children are going to receive these funds properly without having to go through probate, without having to go through executors, and we help our clients to protect themselves in that way. I speak to a lot of people about what's going to happen when you retire, and they say to me, oh, well, don't worry, the company would look after me. Sorry, what's going to happen to you if you die? Oh, the company will look after my wife. But what tends to happen is that most times if you go and read your contract, death and service only pays out 3 times your annual salary and the pension. How long is that going to last for your loved ones? And then we talk about succession. The way that all of this ties in together is because we speak about pension build, we speak about project investing, going into different projects. But what we don't speak about is how all of that then gets ring-fenced into things like international wills, things like offshore trusts, things like portfolio bonds, different structures that can go in to protect you long-term after you've retired, once you've received your retirement income. So we've spoken about all of the challenges. But what I want to speak about now then is, okay, fine, Robert, you've articulated everything so well. We understand what all of the challenges are. How then can we go about fixing this? How then can we go about protecting ourselves? And I want to give 2 examples, specifically for the 2 different stages. Stage number 1 is the pension build, because you can start the pension build right now wherever you are. You're an expat, you've left home, you're not contributing to the pension back home anymore. It doesn't matter how old you are, but you now want to start building. So we will help you to build a regular savings plan. And the value of a regular savings plan is that you understand that there is the time value of money. And regular savings plans work in that way, that you contribute to this regular savings plan. It benefits from compound interest. You build on it and you contribute to it over an extended period of time. And it is able to grow to be able to protect you. And that is over and above your savings. So in that same diagram that had the bank account, then had the savings, then had the projects, cut the project in half, put offshore over here, put onshore over here. My expertise is helping in the offshore portion of your project field in your financial portfolio. What you have at home, the townhouses and the cottage and the banana farm and whatever it is, that's perfectly fine. We leave it there, but we cut that project in half and we start to build in this portion of your financial portfolio, and we use a regular savings plan. This is a practical way that you can take small portions of your excess salary on a monthly basis or on a quarterly basis and contribute to it in dollars, pounds, or euros through international investment firms, through a multitude of asset classes, including and not limited to exchange traded funds, mutual funds, government bonds, commodities, structured products, to build something on your own, independently, that can start to provide for you when you start to get closer to the second stage. And the second stage is then when you're getting closer to the end, because the end is the beginning. The end is the beginning because the end is where you now need to start drawing down from this pension. You need the money now, because this is when you need the money to help pay for your daughter's wedding. You need the money now to help pay for your grandchild's birthday. You need the money now to go on holiday with your children and their spouses. You need the money now because you need to travel more for medical expenses. You need the money now because you and your wife are no longer working and now you want to go on holiday. You need the money now because you and your girls are now finally going to take that trip at the age of 60 that you've been saying you were going to take since you were in your 40s. And what we do is we help our clients to open up open architecture portfolio bonds, investment platforms. These are investment platforms that are designed for lump sums of money, amounts over and above 100,000 United States dollars that can be invested in open architecture portfolio bonds that can be diversified, but can also be drawn from, but are also protected in a tax efficient manner. So I put the example on the screen here about the use of structured notes in retirement planning as a practical example of how you can take a lump sum of money, put it into an investment platform or a portfolio bond, and the kind of investments you can put onto that platform that you can then benefit from when you retire. A structured note is a promissory note that is issued by a bank. And essentially the way that it works is that you give an amount of money to the bank. The bank will keep that money for a set period of time. And every year they will give you a guaranteed coupon or dividend for the time that they're keeping that money. In October of 2022, we had this Morgan Stanley triple index classic waterfall structured note. It paid 15% per annum guaranteed. So, simple as you like. If I have a client who's built up through a regular savings plan and has now built up $1 million United States dollars as their pension, and they take that $1 million and they put it onto an investment platform, and they take that money and they put it into this note at 15%, every year they will get $150,000 as a coupon, not from the capital, as interest coming out of that investment on an annual basis. That is $150,000 that will come guaranteed in perpetuity that you can live on as cash, as an income, and the $1 million is protected. That is a practical way that we take our clients through the journey. You build through the regular savings plan. You get to the end, you put it into a portfolio bond or into an investment platform, and you plug assets underneath it, which give you guaranteed returns while protecting the income so that you can go through this process while not having to worry about whether the money is going to run out or be whittled out. I think the most important thing to note is that the work that we do is designed to complement all the other things that are being done in one's financial life. And when it comes to retirement and when it comes to working with Carrick, not all things are limited to investments. We're also able to help our clients who are thinking about their retirement to purchase properties in other countries. We help our clients with life insurance policies in other countries. We help our clients to wrap regular savings plans and investment platforms in a trust so that when you pass away, you know that these investments that you've got are able to go onto your beneficiaries without any problems. The most important thing, and the reason why I did this webinar, was because I'm not an investment advisor. I'm a wealth manager. So the conversations that I have with my clients are, where did you start out when you started your career? Where's your pension now? Why did you leave? Why did you leave your home country to take this new opportunity? Now that you've gotten this new opportunity, what are you doing with your funds? What's the plan for when you retire? Are you going to retire back home? Do you want to retire somewhere sunny like Portugal or Spain? How are you going to be able to afford all of that? Because it is within those questions and within that perspective and within that context and within the nuance that you can understand the appropriate product or service that can help the client to walk through the stages that we've just discussed. The challenges that so many people are making are mostly informed by the fact that they don't have the information about how they can do it better. It's the reason why people keep investing in the same assets over and over again, because they don't know any better. It's the reason why people start investing into the same thing over and over, because they started late and they didn't know what else to do. It's the reason why people are building unsustainable plans, because they don't know any better. I did this webinar as a call to action to say, if you are an African expatriate, or you know somebody who's an African expatriate, who has left their home country and therefore is in a financial position to be earning in a currency that is not their local currency, and are dealing with these nuances of, well, I'm in this place, but I have to send this back home because I've got the family, but I know that maybe the children are going to go to university somewhere else, and where am I going to end up, and how am I going to provide, and how am I going to protect myself, and what am I going to do when all is said and done, when I get this lump sum from my employer, what am I going to do? Please, please, please ask them to reach out to me. Because it is through those conversations we can then find the practical tools that can then be employed in order to help those people in their retirement. Because I'm seeing too many people retiring very, very badly without the right type of support and without the right type of guidance. So thank you very much, everybody, for attending this webinar. Thank you so much for joining me. What I should have said at the very, very beginning, my apologies, is that if at any time during the webinar you have any questions, please do feel free to drop them into the chat bot. I should have said that at the beginning, my apologies. But on your screens, there should be a chat function that you can ask any questions, which I'd happily answer live right now. Similarly, for everybody who registered and has attended, a recording of this webinar will automatically be sent to you via email tomorrow. It will be uploaded onto YouTube as well, so you'll be able to share it with any friends or family who you think may want to hear what has been shared today. A question that I get answered often is, what is the next step now if anybody wants to meet or wants to take the conversation forward? The answer is, please just take my number or my email address. My phone number is on WhatsApp. My email address as well. Just send me a message and we can arrange a catch-up meeting to go into a little bit more detail about what I've shared. Sorry if I seem a bit distracted. I'm trying to read the questions while I'm speaking. Right, there's a question right there about what next. What do we do if we want to meet? Please just reach out to me via WhatsApp, via email, so we can set up a one-on-one consultation, just to go into whatever your personal details are. Every client is completely different. Every solution needs to be tailor-made to the individual. Another question coming in here. What kind of returns would I get if I gave you $100,000? Right. There's always somebody who asks about returns. The answer to that question is, I don't know. I don't know what kind of returns you would get if you gave me $100,000, because it is absolutely specific to you. So I would answer your question with a question which would be, how long would you want that $100,000 invested? What is your appetite for risk? What is your previous investment knowledge? What is the time horizon before you would want to access those funds? At that point, we would then be able to build that backwards to be able to find you an investment. But the most important thing for you to know is that through the partnerships that we have, you have access to the entire world of investments. There's absolutely no limitation whatsoever into what you can invest in, from government bonds to corporate bonds to commodities to property to mutual funds to hedge fund managers to discretionary fund managers to structured products. So there is no limitation whatsoever in what you would invest in, but I don't have enough information at this point to be able to answer exactly what you would need. There's a question here which says, what is the correct age at which you can start your investment planning? Any age. You can start at any time. There's no age that is better, or there's no age where we say, well, no, it's too late for you to start now. It's just about understanding what resources there are that are available, what options are there when it comes to the circumstances that you're in right now. What is your employment status? There's no correct age. It's, you know, the best time to start was probably 20 years ago. The next best time to start is probably today. There's a question here. Is there a minimum that you have to start with? Yes and no. It again depends on the individual. It depends on what exactly it is that you would want to start with, because the investment companies that we work with have various minimums. So for an individual who wants to contribute on a monthly basis, one company's minimum might be $1,000 a month. Another company's minimum might be $5,000 a month. But the $5,000 a month one might have features that are more attractive than the $1,000 a month one. So it's very hard to answer that, but that's why we always just need to have a private consultation to go into a little bit more detail about what your circumstances are, so we can figure it out. But also through the conversation, the most appropriate thing for you might not be to start an investment necessarily. The best thing might be to start off by maybe starting off a trust or opening an offshore bank account to divert funds there before we get to the investment stage. So it's always a journey. There's another question here. What happens to the pension contributions made in your country before you leave? In many, many instances, for most of the African countries that I've dealt with, the pension that you had when you were at home has to stay at home. There are not many African countries that allow for pension transfers or to relinquish the pension and then be able to take it out before retirement age. So in many instances, while you're still working before you hit retirement age, the pensions are kind of stuck back home. I'm in that situation. My pension in Malawi is in Malawi. I can only access it if I'm unemployed for an extended period of time where I reach retirement age. So that money gets invested with the local pension fund manager, and unfortunately is exposed to all of these issues that we've just described. How late in your working career will retirement planning work? Again, it completely depends on your circumstances. I have clients that are 65 years old. I have clients that are 70 years old. I have clients that are 35 years old. I think the most important thing is understanding what your goals are, because a lot of the conversations have to do with lifestyle. It has to do with, how do you want to live? If you have a lifestyle where you're going to live off of $100 a month, you know, it's not too late to start working on the retirement plan, because maybe that's not a difficult amount to obtain. But if you want to live off $20,000 a month, maybe there's a little bit more of a complicated conversation that needs to be had. But the answer to the question is, how late in your working career will retirement planning work? At any time. We can start at any time. We can make it work at any time. We have access to services that can accommodate that at any time. It just depends on the resources that are available. Do you offer residence visa support for someone intending to retire in Europe? 100%. Fantastic question. I should have included that in my webinar. Thank you to the person who asked that. That needs to be in the next one. 100%. We do have exclusive relationships with organizations that help with retirement through investment. Many countries, not only in Europe, but even in the Americas, as well as other places actually, offer, including Mauritius, where I'm from, where I am right now, offer residency or citizenship through investment. So these are investment programs where if you invest in those countries, you're then able to receive residency or receive a second passport. And this is something that has become very, very popular because there is a very, very specific dynamic, again, which is very unique to African expats. I wish I could have fit it all in. But what happens is that when African expats leave the country and send their children to international universities, sometimes they don't want those children to go back home. So imagine a Nigerian, a Kenyan, or a Rwandan, and they study in the UK or they study in the US. And then when they get to the end of their degree, they want to stay, but because of their passport or because of visa requirements, they're unable to stay in the country and get jobs. And then they have to go back home, and then they have to struggle with being absorbed into the economy because their degree doesn't fit. Residency through investment is something that has been very, very powerful for a lot of African clients of ours to be able to get their children residency or citizenship in other places, including people who want to retire. So we have a lot of clients who are retiring in places like Cyprus, Spain. Portugal has recently reintroduced its golden visa program, Malta. These are all countries in Europe that offer residency through investment programs, which can help you to be able to stay if you want to retire in Europe. I consult on the side. So my savings are not monthly, but in project payment stages at different points in the year. Can Carrick work with such a situation and use strictly on a payment model which requires steadily monthly payments in? We absolutely can. We absolutely can. As a matter of fact, I mentioned in the webinar that there are a lot of our clients that are consultants. Again, the most important thing to remember is that we as Carrick don't have any products. We have relationships with organizations that are the final ones that build the products and have the investments. So my job is to understand your circumstances. And if you say to me, look, Bobby, I'm a consultant, my income is infrequent, these are the contracts that I have, this is how the money comes in, we can still build a plan around that and just find a flexible investment, an investment that allows for ad hoc lump sums, an investment which is open-ended and doesn't have a maturity date. It just has to be appropriate to the individual, whether they want something contractual, where they contribute on a monthly basis, or somebody who wants something open where they can contribute as and when they can. So the answer to the question is that we don't only have steady monthly payment programs where you have to put it in on a monthly basis. It can be open. Similarly, there are no minimums for that as well. It can be something where you put in $1,000 this month, come back the next month and you put $20,000, and then you don't come again for another 12 months and you put another $50,000. But again, because I'm a financial advisor, what we would need to do is we would need to build a plan. Because if we know that retirement is in 10 years, and we know that there's a target amount that we're trying to reach, as much as you can put money in inconsistently, my job is to work with you and say, listen, we're falling short of our mark because this is the gap that we need to bridge. This is what we need to do. And that's why it's very important to work with an advisor to be able to understand what your goals are and align those goals with what your income situation is or your working situation is, Similarly, for people who consult, if you don't have any work coming in or any contracts coming in, you still need to be able to save and invest what you can and when you can. What sort of fee do you charge for your services? Excellent question. What sort of fee do we charge for our services? As an advisory firm, our work comes from doing exactly that, advising. So in every instance, when it comes to working with Carrick, there's only two types of fees that will be incurred. The first is an establishment fee, right? And that is a once-off fee that is charged on the onset of any advice that you take from Carrick. So let's take the question from the consultant. They want to set up an investment where they will put in money as and when they wish, and they want to set it up, and they'll start with an amount of $10,000. What will happen is, prior to us starting that, we will go through a process which we call a discovery session, where we understand exactly what these individuals' needs are. I will then work with my team to build a proposal onto what exactly fits that person's circumstances. Once we've established what that is, we'll go and present that proposal. And if the person decides to initiate that, upon that initiation, where the funds then go directly to the organization that we've advised, we would charge then a once-off establishment fee. But what's important to note is that establishment fee is not paid for directly to us by the client. That is a fee that we receive from the organizations that we have relationships with. So the payment will come to us from the partners that we have. That doesn't come from the client. The second type of fee that we have at Carrick is an ongoing advisory fee. Depending on the particular product that you have and the particular investment that you're doing, because obviously if it's an insurance product, there's no ongoing advisory fee. But I have clients that come to me with $1.5 million and they want me to manage that portfolio on their behalf. I would then be doing ongoing work, and we would charge an ongoing advisory fee. Now, those fees change depending on the amounts being invested, depending on the type of product that's going into. But the most important thing with regards to the question is that those fees are always disclosed to the individual upfront before they make any commitment, so they know exactly what we are being paid as the advisor, and you know exactly what charges you're going to be charged by the investment company that we have recommended. So those fees are always stated to you upfront before you make any decision. There are no consultancy fees. You don't receive an invoice from Carrick for the work that we've done. That's not the way that we work. We work as an advisor to you, and we get paid through commissions from the organizations whose products we distribute. So that puts us at 5 minutes to the hour. I believe there are no other questions, if I'm reading this correctly. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much from wherever you have joined this webinar from. Really like to thank you all for your time. I look forward to hearing from all of you in some way, shape, or form to figure out how I can help you in some way, shape, or form figure out how you can protect your future and that of your family, especially when it comes to your retirement as an expat. Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure to host you. Thank you. God bless.